Hello again. I'm going to make a chicken and leek pie. I've got some leftover cooked chicken and it's a nice way of using it up. So that comes later in the recipe. The first thing to do is get the sauce part cooked. So that's where I'm going to start with that now. So you're going to need a frying pan that has a lid, and I'm going to get the gas on underneath that. I'm going to use a little bit of garlic oil, but you can use whatever oil you prefer to cook with. And into that I'm going to put some bacon lardons. Because I'm using cooked chicken, everything else has got to be cooked and cooled before the chicken is added. You can't keep on reheating chicken. So we'll get all this lot cooked before we get to the chicken. So in go my bacon lardons. Now they're smoked, and that will give it a greater depth of flavour. And we're going to use tarragon as well later on, so that helps too. Tarragon and chicken are just made for each other. So I'll just give this a minute to start cooking, and I want them for the fat to melt and the bacon to be quite well done, quite crispy and brown, although it will soften later on. Now that's sizzled away quite nicely. I'm just going to turn it down a little bit. I don't like it when it splashes me, it's ever so hot. So you can see that's cooking. And to that we'll add our leek. It's half a big leek, and it's left over from something else I was doing. And I haven't sliced it terribly thinly, because I quite like to get that good leek flavour. So we'll turn that in the fat a little bit. And this is going to be a pie that's a generous two-person pie. Obviously, if you want to make it bigger, you just increase all the ingredients and the size of the dish. I'll show you my dish later. So the next thing to do, you might think is a bit strange. I'm going to add some stock to this and put the lid on and give it just 5 minutes so that the leeks begin to cook. As I said, everything needs to be cooked before the chicken goes in. So I've got about a pint of chicken stock. I'm going to guess a quarter of it, perhaps even a little bit less than that. It's going to spit. Turn it down, lid on, phew, and that will give the leeks a chance to cook a little bit before everything else starts to go in. So I'll set the timer for 5 minutes and we'll see how they look. Right, here we go. Lid off, let's have a look. Oh, that's perfect. You can see that the leeks have softened nicely. That's great. Okay, so now we're going to add plain flour next, and it's going to look really, really messy because it's going to just begin to thicken up the sauce. And that is a good tablespoon of plain flour. So stir that in. And in essence what you're doing is making a roux, to be honest with you, but not in the conventional way. So it is a roux sauce, but just with all these other bits in it already as well. Right, so the next thing to go in is a little bit of white wine, sort of a glass. I'll just get that flour off my spoon. Here we go. A little bit of vino blanco. Right. Stir that in. You don't have to put wine in if you don't want to. You can just simply start to add your stock. I'll stir half in to begin with. Turn the heat up a bit and see how it thickens. Right, bring that up to a boil. If it gets too thickened and sticky, I'll put some more stock in. But I'm also now going to add tarragon, a teaspoon of dried tarragon. If you can get fresh, so much the better. And actually, you can freeze what you don't use if you get some dried fresh tarragon, and then you just take it out as you need it. but when I was shopping I couldn't find fresh, so I just got dried. And also at this point you add a good teaspoon of French mustard. There it goes. Get that stirred in. And as the sauce begins to boil, you can see how thick it is and whether you're going to need any more liquid. Now, don't put any salt in. I really would advise you not to salt it at this stage because the smoky lardons are quite salty. You've got stock, lots of flavour from the tarragon and the mustard. So, keep stirring, get it to a boil. You're looking for a nice creamy sauce. And when that's cooled down, we'll add the chicken and finish off the pie. Okay, so I think that's about right. I'll turn that off and let that get cold before we do the next phase. Now, my leek and bacon sauce has cooled down, so I'm ready to start putting the pie together. I've got my chicken cut up, and I did save the stock that I didn't use earlier, just in case when the chicken goes in I feel it's a bit too thick. Now, I've got my pie dish ready. It's sitting on a baking tray simply because it makes it easier to get hold of to put it in and out of the oven. The dish is a 2-pint dish and it's got a rim around the outside, and I'll show you how we're going to make use of that. And in the middle I've got a pie funnel. It's shaped like a little bird, and the idea of that is that it supports the pastry so it doesn't sag down, and the hole in its beak lets the steam out so that the pastry doesn't actually lift off. Now, in the frying pan I've got the cold leek and bacon mixture, and I'm going to add my diced or chopped chicken, which is cold. You must not reheat chicken more than once. So it was cooked and it's going to be reheated when it goes into the pie. So I'll get rid of that and give it a stir. Stir that through the bacon and leek mixture. And I did keep the stock earlier on, just in case I wanted to thin this down a little bit more, but I think that looks okay. So what I'm going to do now is get that into the pie dish. So with a bigger spoon, this goes in around the pie funnel. I wish you could smell it, actually, because the tarragon makes it smell absolutely wonderful. It's going to taste good as well, obviously. There we are, that's that. Now, I'm going to get rid of the frying pan and those 2 spoons and the stock that I didn't need, and turn my attention to the pastry. Now, it's ready rolled, it's a box of commercial pastry. You can make your own if you want to. It's entirely up to you, but this is so easy. What we're going to do is cut narrow strips and wet the edge of the dish and stick them just onto that rim. So if I make 2 to start with, and they're about 1 centimetre wide, then you can use milk, water, egg, whatever you've got, and just brush the edge of the dish, and that will act like glue to stick your pastry on. Okay, that's the first time we're going to do that. Here we go. Lay that on the edge of the dish, press it down. Here comes the other one. And I'm going to have just a little tiny bit more. I've got to be careful not to take too much. And I think I'll cut it about there and lay that on. Oh, look at that. What a good guess that was. So the next thing to do is brush the top of that pastry. Did I tell you I've got the oven on? It's on at gas mark 6, which is 200 Celsius, 400 Fahrenheit. It's 180 fan, and it's going to cook for about 40 minutes. And of course this is puff pastry. You can always make a pie with short crust if you want to, but this is commercial puff pastry. I just think it gives it a lovely sort of light crust. So you take this off its paper and lift it onto the top of the pie. Now you can see where the little bird's bill is, so you make a cut there, and the pastry will just slide down till it rests on the top of the filling. You can give it a hand if it doesn't do it itself. There it goes. And then we've got to pinch this together all the way around. Pinch the 2 layers of pastry together with your thumb and fingers. Get a good join. You can see it's just going down a bit there. I'm going to cut through there. It's quite difficult to cut on the little bill of this thing because it's a funny shape. In the old days they used to just be round. It was like a conical thing with a chimney on the top, and you just cut across the top of it. It was quite flat and they were much easier. Anyway, round we go. Take off the excess. Now you can save this and use it for something else, but fold it up. Don't just screw it up because you'll lose all the layers if you screw it up. So cut round there, lift it off. Now you've got to do something to make this look nice. So what you can do is simply go round with your thumb, and then you can use 2 fingers. I've got to turn it that way to do it though. 2 fingers and the back of a sharp knife, and pull the edge in, and that will give you a fluted edge. And you just go all the way round. And you really just want a good seal so that the top doesn't become detached from the collar, I suppose you could call it. So I'm just putting my thumb where my previous curvy bit was and my finger about 1 inch away and pulling in between, and that way you get them quite neatly spaced, these little marks. And when we've done this, we're going to just glaze the top to make it shiny. There you go, that doesn't look too bad, does it? So back to the egg, and a good egg wash on top. And it's going to cook for about 40 minutes. And when it's out and finished, it should be lovely and golden brown. Again, you could do this with milk. Don't do it with water. It doesn't have to be egg, but you get a better colour with egg. And as you're brushing, the pastry probably will sink a bit more so it sits on the filling. If you wanted to make leaves, you can do that. Put leaves on the top, it's entirely up to you. Some people sprinkle fennel seeds on the top. You could do that if you wanted, but I'm going to put it in the oven like that and give it 40 minutes, okay? Here it is, chicken and leek pie. I'm going to cut it in half. We'll have half each. I think you agree it looks quite nice.